Hey everyone, we've all got hopes and dreams, right? Some people dream of getting a license, others want to save the world. Mine has always been to have a power over Ethernet security camera system streaming 24/7 to a NAS. Oh, I'm so cool. Seriously though, I've previously used Wi-Fi cameras to beef up my home security, but we all know that this will never be as good as a proper wired CCTV system. So when I moved house last year, I ignored unpacking and I set to work on running Ethernet cables everywhere, including through my backyard and into my garage. Who need plates and cups when you can have a Synology Surveillance Station powered by a fully wired setup, right? Of course, there are a couple of downsides to my setup, which I'll cover soon. But firstly, I wanted to cover how and why I ran Ethernet everywhere. So my new house came pre-wired with RJ45 Ethernet wall sockets, which meant I could easily get wired Ethernet in various points around the house. Nice. But I wanted to extend this into my garage and also my attic, especially because I barely had any Wi-Fi coverage outdoors. Plus, I always knew that I wanted security cameras around my property. So I started out by running Cat7 direct burial cables across my backyard and into my garage, which allowed me to get another ERO point there, and I show this process off in detail in another video. Next up, I ran some Ethernet cables up from my study into my attic, so that I could ultimately supply some PoE cameras there if I chose to. I was lucky that there was an easy inspection point in the attic, which appeared to be backing onto one of the study walls over there. So I waited till my wife went out and I started hacking bits of drywall off, and then I drilled some holes and I was able to see my drill bit from the attic. Great. This meant that I could easily run my Cat6 cables. So I dropped one of the cables down from the attic and I fished it through the hole with a small hook. Mission accomplished. I then attached some other Cat6 cables to this with some packing tape, and then I pulled it up into the attic, meaning that I then had multiple Ethernet cables in my attic. I then attached a simple brushed wall plate instead of trying to crimp a proper wall outlet. This was an easier and more pragmatic approach, and it doesn't look too bad in my opinion, but please let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I know it's not really the proper way of doing it. I then attached the Ethernet cables up to a MercurySys PoE switch, and voila, I had powered Ethernet in my attic. I was now ready to choose and install a CCTV camera system. I've previously played around with budget Wi-Fi cameras, and I say budget because they're often fairly low quality, sticking to 1080p resolution and low bit rates. Sadly though, the prices of these budget cameras is anything but budget, with a high upfront cost and usually a high annual subscription fee too. Plus, most of these cameras don't support 24/7 recording either, which isn't ideal. So this left me with two main choices for new camera setup: a traditional CCTV system that records to an NVR or DVR box, or cameras that support open standards like ONVIF and the real-time streaming protocol, so that I could stream my footage to a computer or my NAS. The second option was always my preference because I already have a Synology NAS, and it comes with a 2-camera surveillance station license. So I could test this solution out cheaply enough and see if I liked it, and then if not, I could always switch to a BlueIris setup, or even record to a local SD card to tide me over. When buying the actual cameras, I already knew that cameras like Reolink and Annke had fairly good image quality. They also supported a good mix of open standards, and they were often available at a good price. Annke were owned by Hikvision, who are considered a good professional camera company, and some people say that Annke are actually fairly similar to Hikvision inside, so I opted for them. One of Annke's 4K cameras was on sale at the time, so I purchased this and installed it in my garage to test out. This is a power over Ethernet camera, meaning that I could hook it up to a PoE injectable switch, and then supply a single cable, Ethernet, to the camera, which supplies both power and internet connectivity. This makes the install process much easier and more straightforward. I also had an old 1080p Wi-Fi camera in the garage, and you can see the quality differences here. It's often hard to pick out detail on boxes and similar, and there's also less detail on people's faces too. The proper Annke camera that I'd installed tends to be better in low light, night vision recording conditions, and also when lights are on during daytime recording mode too. I also tended to find that accessing and watching back the Annke recordings was snappier and more reliable than the Wi-Fi camera, which is great. This Annke camera streams to my NAS 24/7, which means that it never misses anything. But it can also jump to where motion has been detected, which kind of gives me the best of both worlds. I don't have to trawl through loads of footage to actually find motion. It's all pretty much perfect, so I decided to buy 5 more Annke PoE cameras to go around the roofline of my house and also garage. Because my soffits are black, I ideally wanted a black PoE camera, but unfortunately these aren't too common. Luckily, Annke recently launched the AC500, which records in 3K resolution, and it has a black option. 2 of these will be for the side of my house and 2 at the front to cover the full view. You can get dual lens cameras to cover the same area, but they're usually more expensive than buying 2 cameras separately, and they're often only available in white. So I had my new AC500 cameras and I got to work installing them. I bravely got out a ladder and I climbed up 7 meters during a thunderstorm to install them. Kidding. I just opened my window and I drilled the necessary holes from the safety of my upstairs windows. Work smart, not hard. I used the right screws for PVC soffit, and while some people worry that simple screws can be yanked out by a burglar, these cameras are so high up that this wasn't really a concern to me, to be honest. I then used a 20mm drill bit for the central hole, which is where the camera's Ethernet plug actually fits through. Then I pushed the plug through and mounted the camera to the back bracket. Next up, I just had to go into my attic, find the camera's Ethernet plug, and then connect it to the Cat6 cables that I ran earlier. It wasn't fun. This is a thing called insulation, and it's itchy. Plus, if you breathe it in, it can make you cough a lot. So it's best to wear a face mask, but then my glasses all fog up and I can't see anything. Catch-22. In the end though, I was able to plank on the attic timbers, and this allowed me to just about fish the Ethernet plugs out from the soffit tray and hook up the Cat6 cables I'd run earlier. Voila! My PoE switches burst into life and I could see both data and power being supplied to them. I set them up in the usual way, which was a mix of using the initial Annke web-based software to activate them, and then I went onto the Synology Surveillance Station to add them and drive them through the NAS. And soon I had multiple 3K cameras recording 24/7 to my NAS. I'm really happy with these Annke cameras, both the image and audio quality is pretty good, especially considering these are mounted 6 or 7 meters up on a roofline, and they're fully exposed to the elements such as rain and wind. It's also really easy to download clips, and there's some nice features like being able to drag and zoom in on a particular area of the recording. They're recording good image quality in the day and nighttime, and I can nearly always pick out any detail that I need to from both people and objects such as cars. There's nothing worse than investing good money in a camera system and then not being able to see who someone is, for example. Equally, I can easily see detail on items such as the text on a box in my garage, and this is clear in both day and nighttime recording modes. I can also read car reg plate numbers which are going past without any real issues too, which is always a good test of a camera's image quality. So far, this all works really well. The Surveillance Station is a nice app which you can naturally access on a PC or laptop, either in a browser or via a separate software application that you download. But you can also download the DS Cam phone app and watch early clips on here. All the camera feeds are snappy and high quality. Because I'm relying on a hardwired Ethernet-based setup, it's also really reliable, and I've never had any issues with missed recordings or anything like that. Since recording these clips, I have set up privacy masks on various areas within the Synology Surveillance Station to protect my neighbour's privacy, but I wanted to firstly show off what everything looked like with the full field of view enabled. Another neat feature of the Surveillance Station is the monitor center, where you can easily create a customized view showing off as many of your cameras as you would like. You can actually show this on a TV screen somewhere in your house or place of work, and if you find this taking up too much bandwidth, you can always dial down the image quality to medium or low quality streams. Or if you're displaying this on a 4K screen or monitor, you can go for the highest quality, and then you can make out pretty much every detail on a glance. It's a really sweet setup and is so much nicer than what a typical 1080p Wi-Fi camera system tends to offer you. Synology Surveillance Station actually has a ton of features, including setting up triggers for potentially suspicious behavior, facial recognition, extra video encryption, and more. I've barely scratched the surface, to be honest. So there are various benefits to using Synology for this, but equally there's some downsides too. Many Synology NASs only support 2 cameras for free, meaning you then need to buy an extra camera pack. This cost me around £40 per camera for the extra ones, which I actually don't mind because it works out a lot cheaper than some cloud subscription fees. But you do need to factor in the price of these, especially because a Synology NAS can easily cost you hundreds or even thousands of pounds or dollars in the first place. There are some alternatives though. Firstly, I could have just popped an SD card in each of the cameras and either configured it to record to this every time the motion is detected, or set it up on a schedule so that the camera records continuously at night, but only on a motion-only basis during the day, for example. This would have been a very low-cost option, but naturally it wouldn't have had as much power or flexibility as the system I've got right now. Another option would have been to buy a cheap PC, install BlueIris on it, and then stream my cameras to this. Essentially, I would have been making my own surveillance station. This can work out very well, but it typically requires more customization and tinkering than a solution like Synology or similar. Plus, even if I went out and purchased a second-hand Dell Optiplex or HP Elite Desk, it wouldn't have worked out much cheaper overall than just buying a Synology NAS. So would I change anything? Well, at first I was concerned about whether my NAS would be overloaded by having 6 cameras streaming 24/7 to it. But right now, CPU, RAM and disk usage are all fine. I have no lag or missed recordings anywhere, and the other functions on my NAS, like file syncing and backup jobs, are running without issue. So that's great. I'm actually really happy with this setup. I could potentially look to get a large capacity drive because right now I only have 4 terabytes of storage for my 6 cameras and then all my other files too. But this is still enough for 1 or 2 weeks of footage per camera, so that's okay for me right now. Finally, I'm conscious that right now I have everything on a single NAS, all my files and camera recordings. I could eventually get a second NAS and have one dedicated to file stuff and another as a camera box. But again, right now things work as they are, so there's no real need to spend any extra money here. And that wraps up this video. If you enjoyed it, please click the thumbs up button. Please also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and thank you for watching.